a report from Australia indicating that China is now the biggest debt collector in the developing world. China went through this Belt and Road Initiative, and it was the idea that we're going to invest in these countries' railroads and ports because it would be economically beneficial for us, because we want to build economic passageways for capital to transition between our states, resources, trade, maybe even service goods down the line, who knows? But point is, we're building these passageways. But in this process, certain nations took on debt in order to take some of these infrastructural investments. When you talk about, for example, in Uganda, the investment in railways, or you talk about investment in Pakistan, or investment in a lot of places in Africa, South America, Central Asia, Southern Asia, a lot of the world that is trying to pull itself into a higher stage of development. I don't want to say stage of development, but a higher level of development, was using Chinese capital to do it. And China was handing out a lot of debt for a period, but that had slowed down in recent years. And it had slowed down both because of China's internal own economic concerns, meaning that, they're not an endless money printing machine that can just send money everywhere, but also because there was questions about the sustainability of the deals they've made, and if they keep making other deals and keep putting out more debt and getting more debt, or keep sending out more money, when there's going to be a lot of these nations that might not be able to service that debt, well, then what type of investment are you making? I mean, maybe you'll have some sort of political leverage over said country, whether it's be Sri Lanka or otherwise, which had $4.2 billion of debt to the Chinese when they started spiraling towards default. But right now, the Chinese are taking in $35 billion every year from this debt. And the countries that are saddled with the most debt, I think I've already mentioned a few of them, but let me list them again: Pakistan, Kenya, Zambia, Laos, and Mongolia. Now, this bringing in of the debt is also going to be corresponding with China being more conscious about who they're giving debt to, and more selective, or at least who they're investing their money with. Because I think in the future, this status of biggest debt collector is not going to be going away anytime soon, because these nation states have not gotten close to paying off of that debt. And I think that with the economic turmoil ahead, with the uncertainty caused by the tariffs, and still the looming threat, even if it isn't the immediate threat, but the looming threat of global recession, is not only going to make it more difficult for them to pay these debts, but other nation states are going to want to look for ways to get capital in order to continue developing, either through economic crisis or after the economic crisis. But China started winding down on these loans being put out pre-COVID. So post-COVID, when they're already dealing with so many problems, it's going to be hard to get a loan from the Chinese now, which probably means that the terms aren't going to be fantastic, which is part of the reason they're getting $35 billion a year from this. I think they collect from developing world nations. Yes, Bleak, I know. That's what I'm saying. They collect $35 billion a year from developing nations. And the reason that they're collecting that money is because they've made investments like in railways and other infrastructure in those nations in exchange for debt. And so now this is the end result of that. And this isn't a threat that came out of nowhere. It's not like people aren't conscious in that threat. In fact, when we talk about politics in Kenya, the person who won the last Kenyan election won it in part because he was lampooning the large amount of debt that was taken from the Chinese, and describing it as corrupt. And when you look at some of the dealings and the effectiveness of the construction, there have been scandals when it comes to Chinese companies, not only when it comes to the treatment of workers and the bringing of Chinese workers to work instead of hiring local workers, which Which you would expect to happen to some capacity, but has been known to create tension. I remember there being even some tension when TSMC, the Taiwanese semiconductor factories, when they were first setting up, they brought over some staff, and that actually caused some political tension. Even though, I mean, to set up one of the most advanced, no, some of the most advanced semiconductor factories, even though it's not going to be the cutting edge, that's still in Taiwan. In the United States, you're going to need some staff there, but that caused tensions too, before we even talk about any of the corruption. And so I think that with this debt collection, which of course $35 billion a year, that's useful spending change. That's useful spending money. There's a certain amount of political leverage that is attained, and these are countries that once they have these infrastructural projects in them, in many instances, it can benefit China down the road. Like, for example, Pakistan, a nation state that China does a lot of business with. I mean, if you want to talk about Chinese military sales, Pakistan is number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on that list. They buy a lot of Chinese military gear. But I think this is also going to come with a lot of baggage. And that baggage is already felt by the Kenyan population, who elected someone based, not all we're going to say on an anti-Chinese sentiment, but an anti-corruption and anti-Chinese debt sentiment. And of course, the debt crisis in Sri Lanka was not a great look. And if other countries enter a debt crisis, especially entering a period of international economic turmoil, China is going to get an image that is not going to be exactly squeaky clean. That's not to say it's squeaky clean now, but it's going to get a perception in the region of a debt hawk, of coming in and burdening these nations with debt that then took away from investment in schools, infrastructure, and instead they're investing in debt that originally was taken for what? Infrastructure investments. So that's going to either lead to, in my mind, not only a decrease in public approval of maybe the Chinese government and the countries affected, but I think it'll also cause other countries that might have considered taking on Chinese debt maybe to not take on Chinese debt. Now, look, at the end of the day, these countries will probably take the best deals offered to them. So if another nation wants to get in there, they're going to have to offer a better deal than the Chinese if they want to get in there to replace these bad Chinese deals and try to get in on African investment. Now, whether or not there's going to be a scramble for Africa is going to depend upon, and when I say scramble for Africa, I don't mean to make this some comparison to the colonial period. I just mean that the only way I can describe this
bankrupt man
is that they need to scramble, they need to hustle, I think maybe hustle for Africa would come with less historical baggage, a hustle for business deals in Africa. That emphasis I haven't seen as much from Washington. While they keep talking about the importance of Africa, I haven't seen like clear plans on how to make up the difference. And so for now, China is the biggest debt collector in the developing world. And while the United States program of grants has never been particularly popular, I don't think this Chinese model is winning many, many, many fans either. Hey, Sleepless TO, thank you so much for the primer. Being sub for 2 months. I appreciate that. Thank you.